I was the first female director.
Wow, that's incredible.
And so it was really amazing and awesome and scary and terrifying. I remember the very first meeting I went into in this big boardroom, I was the only woman. And I was like, oh my God, it's real. But then, found my way in and was well accepted and did a great job. But I also felt an overwhelming responsibility to now get more women into higher levels.
Hi, I'm Courtney Gumbleton, and welcome to the Founders Club podcast, the show where you'll hear the incredible stories of the unapologetically ambitious women founders who are redefining the wild world of entrepreneurship in Texas. Welcome back to the Founders Club. Today I have a special guest, Elyse Dickerson. She's the CEO and co-founder of Eosera, Inc., a female-led biotech company committed to developing innovative products that address underserved healthcare needs. Elyse has over 2 decades of experience leading teams in the healthcare and pharmaceutical industries. She managed portfolios with annual revenues of over $1.7 billion and drove product innovation and the commercialization of numerous technologies across the globe. Elyse, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So one funny thing that I read about you is that you love sparkling water.
I do. I always have one sitting on my desk.
So guess, believe it or not, we both brought in our own can of LaCroix. So if you are a LaCroix rep out there, we would love your sponsorship. I'm just kidding.
Absolutely.
So Elyse brought in the lime, and mine is how do you say that?
Limoncello or limoncello?
I'm sure somebody will correct me. So I was asking Elyse, what's your favorite flavor?
And I'm so boring because I think it's the plain.
Just
the blue
What
can.
does that? I've never even had that before. What does that even?
It's fresh and clean, and I don't know. It's just boring. I like all of them.
My favorite is definitely the coconut, and I always buy LaCroix every time we go to the grocery store, and my husband and son always tease me about it. And they say, ooh, water that really tastes like nothing. How exciting. But that's your favorite.
Totally. It's got the bubbles,
Yes.
So it tastes like something.
Well, that's the best part.
Right.
That's the best part. Who needs Diet Coke anyways? Well, thanks so much for your time and joining us as a guest. I've been a fan for a while, and this is actually the first time that we're meeting in person. Although we were at an event together, that women's symposium. I was the one who stood up and asked that question about the glass ceiling. Anywho.
The glass ceiling's real.
That's right. It's a thing. So let's kind of start off in the beginning. Tell me about your childhood growing up. I think I read that your father's a physician, which, may have inspired your journey into healthcare.
Well, no. But yes, he was a physician. He's retired now. My mother actually hit a midlife crisis when she was about 40 and started a business out of her home. So that was really my first example of entrepreneurship, and especially a woman in entrepreneurship. And she still today, in her 70s, still runs her business, not out of our home anymore, but still 35, 40 years later, has a growing business. So
that's incredible.
It's really cool.
How wonderful to be able to observe your mother.
It's so amazing. And especially in that generation, most of the moms when I was growing up didn't work. They worked in the home, took care of the home and always had dinner on the table. And so there weren't a whole lot of examples for me to potentially see myself in. But as a child, I was super active, loved sports. I have vivid memories in preschool of racing the boys, across the front of the preschool, and my goal was to beat them, right? Not just to race them, but to beat them, and usually could. And just the joy that I found in sports and athletics. On the other hand,
Let me ask you,
yes.
is it because, this joy that you found, is it because you're a competitive person?
Just a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I have definitely learned as I've matured that the competition really is about being the best I can be.
Oh, that's
It's not
great.
necessarily about beating other people.
But that's kind of fun too sometimes.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
Teach their own.
But
So you just want to be your best self.
yeah. So I was the teenager that was, staying late after workouts and working hard to, build my strength or build my, endurance or just for me, so driven in that way. On the other hand, then I was not a great student. In third grade, I was diagnosed with dyslexia. And really up until third grade, before they diagnosed me, I really just kind of thought I was dumb. And a lot of the teachers in the school system, dyslexia wasn't something that was commonly diagnosed back then. And so there was not a lot of literature about it, or people weren't talking about it. And so kids were just sidelined and told, you shouldn't expect a whole lot out of these children. And luckily, I had two parents that saw more in me and saw my potential. And so they were able to hire tutors outside of school. So really fourth and fifth grade, I think it was 3 mornings a week before school, I worked with, a tutor. And thank God that they had the resources to be able to do that. And that put me then on a path to, educational success later in life.
So, what was it like hearing school administrators tell your parents that they really shouldn't expect a whole lot out of you? And what was your mother's response to that?
I mean, I still get chills. It's devastating. Even as a kid, I can't remember how old you are in third grade, but, 8 or 9. Yeah. I mean, you hear that and you internalize that because you trust the people that are older than you, and they must know. And so
it's like they're predicting your future.
Absolutely. And so I completely internalized it. And then the stories that I would tell myself in my head, which we all have those voices in our head, right?
That inner critic.
Oh, very powerful. And but my mom, she was ahead of her time in many, many ways. And she, I think, saw that probably verbally I was, more advanced and I was creative, and she just saw something in me that, the people that didn't know me so well, those educational experts, didn't take the time to learn about me. And so she knew, yeah, she may not be able to read right now, but there's something in there that we've got to, tap into.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you bring it up because it's almost the same with ADHD. Kids today who struggle with ADHD and maybe don't get diagnosed until they're adults. And then when they find out, it's like they had no choice but to develop all these coping mechanisms to kind of combat the deficit. And you were doing that. So once you got past the barrier of learning how to read and being able to communicate, how did that add to your confidence?
So I will say academically, I didn't reach what I would call confidence level until graduate school.
Oh, wow.
So even in college, I was super intimidated. I got into a great school. I worked really hard in high school, got into Notre Dame, went there. But then when it came time to pick a degree, I was completely intimidated by, the math, engineering, even business route. And so I chose graphic design, which ended up being a wonderful fit for me and actually for my future to have those design skills and creative skills. But I picked it because I was intimidated by what I'd call the harder degrees. And it was sports that really allowed me to build confidence in my younger years. And I think I had a natural gift. I was very driven, competitive. And so coaches liked me. And coaches really took me under their wing and helped me develop leadership skills, teamwork skills. And I think the most important thing is they showed me if I was willing to work hard, I could get there. And so...
And you were willing to work hard with all the tutoring.
Yes. And whether it was in academics or sports, I was always willing to work hard. So it was like, everybody finds their own path. I think the value, though, a lot of us, we don't take the time to look backwards and see how we got to where we are. Because there's all these hints about who we are now as adults that come from our childhood, right? And I think it's so valuable to just spend time thinking back. How did that make me feel? Why did that impact me the way it did? Because now it just gives me a lot more insight in how I respond to things now and, what motivates me now.
And there's a whole gratitude factor there too. I mean, looking at all these strong, independent women, a lot of us have gone through traumatic experiences, being able to move past it and be who we are today. A lot of that is because of, what we went through.
100%. And I have found incredible value in us as women sharing those experiences and the power in sharing them. So often
that's what this podcast is all about. Is this? We're not just here to celebrate your wins. I mean, don't get me wrong. We're here to celebrate your wins, but that is not going to empower somebody else. We don't want to paint a Cinderella picture of this isn't a Cinderella story. I mean, life is hard and running a business is hard.
100%. Yeah. And we find strength from each other.
Right.
And rather than hide in our shame, we celebrate each other and we help each other along the way. Right.
And instead of just achieving success, it's so much more meaningful. And we'll get to this with your story, is having to go through some rejection and failure, and then the success, it tastes so much sweeter.
Absolutely.
So let's go back a little bit to high school. We're talking a little bit about perseverance, college. How did you navigate the traditional aptitude tests? And did you feel like your school set you up for success to attend college?
Yes and no. So my mom decided in, I think it was 11th grade, to have aptitude testing done. And I think it was called Myers-Briggs or something like that. And she had my brother do it. He was a couple years older. And it really gave direction in what kind of degree that we should pursue in college. So that's really why she was having us do it. It was really to build our confidence, say, hey, here's your strong suit. Mm-hmm. Let's go after that. Well, I had the test done and was shocked and disheartened when at the end of I think it was like 2 days of testing, the test administrator sat me and my mom down and said, I don't think Elyse will make it through a rigorous 4-year college.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's like, how dare you?
Yeah.
You don't even know me.
Exactly. And I'd gone to a prep school, high school, and it was college prep, right? I mean, they prepared us for the rigors of the academics and the level of homework and how to write papers and be organized and skills you need to succeed in college. But this one, test is saying Elyse reads really slow. So I'm not sure she's going to make it through a rigorous 4-year college. So I remember crying on the way home and just being devastated because, again, this is an expert, right? I should believe this expert.
Well, but they were right, though, in that you didn't actually graduate in 4 years, right?
That is true. I did it in 3.
That's right.
And that's my competitive side, right? So I had something to prove. I absolutely
had
something to prove.
I love that. As soon as I heard about that, it was like, he's right. I did it in 3. That's incredible.
Now you know about me. That's all you need to know about me.
I love that. So let's talk a little bit more about your competitive spirit.
Yeah.
You are an athlete, a marathon runner, an Ironman triathlete. Share with us about that.
I'm crazy. is what it comes down to. No, I think, so especially in my 20s, as I was kind of coming out of grad school, a lot of I found my social life in sports. And I think it was a healthy outlet for me in my 20s because I wasn't into the bar scene or drinking scene. And so I started out of college running marathons, did the Chicago Marathon was my first. And I'm always somebody that has needed goals. I need to set them for myself and I need to achieve them. And that's just kind of how I've moved forward in life. And so again, it was for me, it wasn't for anybody else. And millions of people run marathons. But for me, it was a big deal. And so then I fell in.
It is a big deal.
Yeah. And so to accomplish that.
But that's coming from a 5K girl.
Hey, but a 5K, that's just it's an accomplishment, right?
Yeah.
So I fell into this really great group. I lived in Dallas in graduate school and then after graduate school, and we were all kind of running marathons. And then somebody said, "Hey, why don't we try a sprint triathlon?" I was like, "Okay, let's do it." And so, I got a bike and started swimming, and we did a sprint triathlon. And then it was like, well, we did that, so now let's try a longer one, an Olympic distance. And then it's, why don't we try a half Ironman? And then it was sort of the ultimate, okay, let's do an Ironman. And it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I did it once.
I think my business partner did one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
So you bike, you swim.
You swim like 2.4 miles, and then you bike like 112 miles, and then you run a marathon at the end of it.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like a 12, 13, 14-hour race. And
how long do you train for it?
I hired a coach and trained for a year after already being, able to do the half Ironmans pretty easily.
Wow.
So, but again, it kind of just goes back to I need a goal and then I need to achieve it kind of mindset. And it was a healthy outlet for me. And it was a social outlet. So I met just wonderful, they're still lifelong friends through the process because, you're sweating together, you're tired together, you're pushing each other. And so I have found there's a lot of correlation in business between sports, endurance sports, and trying to start a business, right?
That's fascinating. Yeah. So now it's like, why would you want to run alone? Why would you want to run a business alone?
Right.
Wow. So are you still running marathons?
No, as I've aged, the running, I've sort of put the running on the back burner. I do a lot of cycling now, so you'll see me out most mornings and then on the weekends on long rides. And
yeah, that's a big thing. Cycling has gained a lot of popularity.
Yeah, not a lot of women. I would love to find some more women. So any women in Fort Worth, hit me up if you're a cyclist, because I find myself with mainly men, which is fine. They're great, but would love to get a bigger female contingency out on the bikes.
Yeah, the person I bought my house from, Sheila Gibson, I don't know if you know her. She's avid cyclist too.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love seeing women out there.
Yeah.
So let's skip forward to Big Pharma. Let's talk about Elyse in corporate America.
So out of graduate school, I got my MBA. I went back to get an MBA because I didn't know what to do with my life. So many of your listeners may either be at that point or have been through that point. Like you're just like, I don't know what to do, so I'll go back to school.
It sounds familiar.
Right? It was a great...
No, there are a lot.
Absolutely, yeah. And it actually ended up being a great thing for me because built new skills, built new confidence.
New connections.
But got out of business school and had no idea what to do. And so a friend... I did a short stint at Neiman Marcus. So this was back in 2000. And you can imagine this was, they were going to start an online business in 2000.
Oh my gosh.
No one shopped online back then. We barely had internet.
Yeah, it was pretty much AOL.
Right. And so Neiman Marcus hired a bunch of young people out of graduate school to start this online store. Well, we couldn't even really imagine what that looked like or felt like. And so within a year,
market.
Yeah, within a year, we hadn't met any of the goals or expectations. So we were all let go, or a lot of us were let go. And it was devastating. So that was the first time I was fired. So that means there's more.
I didn't know you were fired there.
Yeah. Let go. But
Our first podcast guest, you're our second. Our
Yeah.
first podcast guest also got her start at Neiman Marcus.
was she fired?
I don't know. But
most people don't share that.
But she left
Yeah.
for reasons.
Yeah. So was there a year, and then again, like, had no idea what to do. And so a friend introduced me to this big pharmaceutical company, and I'm like, I don't know anything about pharmaceuticals, but why not? So I went for the interview, got the job, and then spent 13 years moving my way up through corporate America, and learned amazing things, how to build brands, how to think about different marketplaces, different regions of the world, and everything that goes into building products. But I also learned sort of the dark side of corporate America. And that
Tell us more about this.
Women make it to a certain level, and then they stop progressing. And so you would see, and I had friends across all different types of businesses in corporate America, and it was pretty much the same everywhere. That senior manager level, women would work their way up senior manager level and do a great job, but then they wouldn't get past there. So there was the ceiling. Like, you'd look above you and it was all men, and no one really knew why.
Was it the good old boys club?
Yeah, I think so. It's part of that. And just historical, right? My mom's generation, they wouldn't have even made it to the senior manager level.
Right.
So some of this is just legacy.
Do you think the mentality from the men at the top is, hey, they're not secretaries and receptionists anymore?
Absolutely.
Like, they're lucky that this generation got this far.
Absolutely. There's a lot of that. Yeah. And so it just takes,
until it's their daughters.
Exactly.
Right?
100%. Yep. And so it takes that generation, though, to unwind some of that thinking and getting younger leadership, moving up. So about 8 years into my tenure, I was moving up rapidly, keeping pace with my male peers. And then once I made that senior manager level, I went to a couple of the vice presidents and I said, I want to be, a female director. And
good for you.
Yeah. So I went and asked for it. And I think you have to ask for they may tell you no.
Was it scary putting yourself out there like that?
Absolutely. But I also knew enough to come really prepared with all my accomplishments, why I felt like they should, put me in the role and why I was qualified. So I didn't just go in and say, hey, I want to be a director. Right.
I want to raise.
Right.
You had all that supporting evidence with you.
Absolutely. And I'd put in the time, right? I'd traveled the world. I had, put in the hours, and then you got to ask for it. And so, lo and behold, I was the first female director.
Wow, that's incredible.
And so it was really amazing and awesome and scary and terrifying. I remember the very first meeting I went into in this big boardroom, I was the only woman. And I was like, oh my God, it's real. But then, found my way in and was well accepted and did a great job. But I also felt an overwhelming responsibility to now get more women into higher levels. And so I really took that on over the next 5 years to really figure out how we're going to get more women in upper ranks.
So how did you do that? And why was that important to you?
I don't know why. I have always, I think it maybe have been some of my self-confidence that I had confidence in myself. I knew I deserved to be there, but I also knew other women deserved to be there. Mm-hmm. And I've always had a giving heart as well. And I just, I'll tell you, one conversation I had with my parents was they kind of sat me down and said, if you don't do it, who's going to do it? You have a responsibility. With privilege comes responsibility. You now have this privilege in a higher level. A lot of women can't go without their paycheck. They can't, they can't take the risk of standing up for what's right, but you can. And it was a real moment of introspection and sort of a, slap in the face, like, they're right. Like, if I don't do it, who's going to do it? And so that started a whole new journey of, trying to make changes in a huge organization that didn't want to change.
So do you consider yourself a risk taker?
Yeah, I guess I am. I think because I knew at that point I had nothing to lose and a lot to gain. I mean, I did have something to lose. I ended up losing my job. But at the end of the day, I knew it was for the right reasons, and so I've always been somebody that's principally driven. And if you know in your heart you're doing the right thing for the right reasons, it's kind of hard to say no.
Right. Well, and you've been a leader since your sports days. So as you were trying to help your organization essentially gain parity, how did you handle dealing with limitations during this time from the gender bias that you were experiencing?
So limitations in terms of me being able to move up further, or just what I was seeing around me?
Everything.
Everything.
All of it. Not being invited out to dinner or afforded the same opportunities.
Yeah.
What you were observing around you.
There was no right or wrong pathway. I mean, I'm always one. I would talk to the people I worked for. I tried to have open and frank conversations, tried to advocate for myself and for other women, and never in a combative way
But you didn't stay silent.
But I did not stay silent. And that is where I think most corporations in America have gotten away by paying women to stay silent. Mm-hmm. And I could have made a lot of money and walked away and been, but it wasn't about money for me. It wasn't, and I think that was shocking. I think a lot of corporations would be taken back when a woman's like, yeah, no, it's a lot of money, but no, that's not what I'm after.
Right.
And I think
that's not what motivates you.
Correct. And so there were opportunities to stay silent. I didn't. And, pretty much every time I speak at an event now, there are women in the room that have received promotions or pay raises or are now vice presidents that come up and say, hey, I'm where I am today because of what you did.
That's incredible.
Which makes, it's totally worth it. It was totally worth putting myself out there.
Well, and it makes me think about all those trailblazers who've come before us that, if they hadn't done what they did, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing right now.
Isn't that the truth? We wouldn't have bank accounts. We wouldn't have lines of credit. We wouldn't have credit
cards. We wouldn't be able to travel under our own name. Couldn't report podcasts.
It's true, though, right? Our moms couldn't open, a credit card without a man signing for it.
Right.
Or a bank account without a man signing for it. Either a father or a husband. Think about that.
Married women couldn't even get passports.
It's crazy. So we've come a long way. Still got a long way to go.
So you hinted to a difficult time in your life back in 2015 when you found yourself on sick leave and unfairly got terminated. Can you share a little bit more about kind of what happened, how you found out, and how you felt about it?
There's a lot in the press that people can read about. I can't share a lot about it. I can tell you I was, I received a FedEx on my front doorstep and said, you're terminated. Don't come back. And it's devastating. It's absolutely devastating when you've given majority of your life to an organization. You loved the people there. You knew you were fighting for the right things. And you get cold cocked, right?
You're obviously loyal. You were there for over a decade.
Right. Almost a decade and a half. Yeah. Incredibly loyal. And so I remember everybody was gone from the house. Kids were at school. My husband was gone. And I took that FedEx letter, sat on my bed and just cried. And I share that because it's real. That's real life. And
it's heartbreaking news. So what was going through your mind? Were you thinking that you did something? Were you worried about paying your bills? Were you, what was kind of the thought process?
Yeah, so I knew.
Of course, shock.
Yeah, shock. I really didn't think I'd be fired. wasn't worried. I knew enough. One bit of advice I give to every young person is save your money. And so I had been the kid. My brother's friends in college called me mutual funds because in college I would get allowance from my parents and I would invest it. Like I was that nerd that just started. And so every time I got any kind of bonus, even if it was $25, right, I would save it. And so that made the financial part of it when I was then 40 and fired easier because I knew I could pay my mortgage and I had a husband that had a job and had benefits. But it's still scary, right? Because you're living off a certain income and then all of a sudden that income's gone and you're like, well, that savings was savings.
You're used to seeing a certain amount come into the bank every month and it's like, ooh.
Absolutely. So, but luckily I had that discipline over all the years. So the financial part wasn't as scary. That would be scary for most people, I think, if you haven't prepared. It was, I think, the fear of what people would think of me.
Your reputation, what this would do.
Yeah. And I know, we like to believe that we don't think what other people think about us, but we do. And in that kind of moment, I knew I had done the right thing, but nobody knew my story at that point. Or people, some people did, but, and my being and my, was wrapped up in my accomplishments, right?
Yeah, that's where a lot of people get their self-worth from.
Right? And I realized how dangerous that is and how it's so not true. But I was wrapped up in it. And so that was probably the biggest devastation is, oh my God, people are going to think I'm a failure, or people are going to think, I'm a whiny bitch, or who knows? A million things go through your mind.
Getting fired it's just so difficult. I got fired right before I started Locavore. I mean, that was part of why I started Locavore and decided I didn't want to be a CEO of a nonprofit foundation any longer. The same thing happened. I was shocked. It was like right before Christmas. It's like, are you kidding me? And I think what's so unfair about it is it's so one-sided. It's like now everybody knows you're fired, but they don't know what really happened. They don't know who was in the right. Not that it matters, but all of that.
And it doesn't matter, but it does to the person.
Right.
But
yeah. Internally, it's absolutely.
Yeah. And so the reason pretty much every time I speak, I talk about being fired. And I do because nobody teaches you that if you work for somebody else, there is a high likelihood you are going to lose your job one day. They don't tell you that in business school. They don't tell you that in undergrad. Your parents don't tell you that.
Well, now during COVID, I think a lot more people have seen that happen.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means you weren't a right fit for where you were at that time.
Right.
But it took a lot
and maybe that's not where you're meant to be anymore. Maybe we weren't meant to be there any longer than we were. And maybe we were just supposed to be there for a short time or, a while to get those lessons to move on to that next chapter.
That's 100%. And that's what I believe now. It doesn't feel like that in the moment, as you know.
Oh, painful. So
painful. So painful. And so what I can say is...
But then it's the best thing, right? Is the best thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I've been asked before, like, have you ever thanked the people that fired you? And I'm like, no, but yeah. Best thing that ever happened.
No, but secretly in the back of your mind,
like, thank you.
When you're in the press and stuff for your new business, it's like, thanks. See what you did?
See what you did?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You allowed me to find my true purpose and true potential.
Absolutely. So I just love how open and transparent you are about being fired because it's a personal thing. It's a sensitive thing. And, not a lot of people are comfortable being vulnerable. Of course, it does make it a little easier once you've reached success on the other side. But, I mean, still, I'm sure it makes you appreciate the success that you've reached that much more, knowing that you had to go through a really difficult situation. So we talked a little bit about how you felt. I guess once, you kind of went through the denial, anger, shock, the DABDA or whatever it is, the acceptance phase. What next? What happened once you're like, okay, they fired me, I'm not going to work there anymore. Now what?
Yeah, so I think it was a process for sure. It was a short process for me, and I think some of that was the sports training and, like you get back up and you fight another day, and I knew in my soul I had done nothing wrong. And so that made it easier, right? If I had done something nefarious or that deserved to be
fired. That brings you peace.
Yeah, absolute peace, 100%. And anyone that knows me, and I think I had some really good friends in the moment that reminded me, they're like, people in this community, they've known you your whole life. They know who you are, what your values are. Like, screw it, screw those people. You're amazing, and you can, because you worry about your reputation. You worry about, it's silly, but we all do. So I would say within a month, I was ready. I was ready to go. I signed up for some courses on Eosera, which if you've never been on that website, it's amazing. It's got all these college courses from all these universities that you can take for free if you don't want the credit. So I took a venture finance course to remind myself about how to raise capital, and I was all in. I was gonna start a company. Had no idea what the company was gonna be, what we were gonna do, but I was gonna start a company. And then it just so happens that my co-founder, Joe Griffin, he was let go from the same company about 3 months later after I was. And so when he was let go, he texted me and I was like, all right, let's do this together. Let's go. And so once we just made the decision, there was no looking back. It's like, we're gonna do this until we fail.
So what was it like bringing on a business partner?
So luckily, Joe and I had worked together for about 10 years. And he hit a very opposite skill set from me. He's a scientist, R&D, doesn't want to be the front man, and he had worked directly for me in the last few years. And so I wasn't really worried about having a partnership because we knew each other so well. If I didn't know him, I think I would step into it gingerly, because partnerships in a business is like a marriage.
Oh, totally.
Right?
I have a business partner too.
Yeah.
And same thing, our skills, they're so opposite and so complementary. We stay in our own lanes. And for many of our listeners who have started a business or want to, running a business and starting one is extremely lonely. There's a steep learning curve, and having a business partner, I really think it's one of the best business decisions I've ever made.
I 100% agree. I think.
Can you imagine doing it all by yourself?
No, especially not the first time.
I think the job and the vision's too big.
Yeah, and you need that moral support, as you're going. And I think having the opposite skill sets is key. Where I see people running into trouble is when they do the exact same thing, or they're both competing to be the leader. Like, you just have to be very clear from the onset of, what lane you're in, and who's making the ultimate decisions. And it was easy in our case. I had the business background. I was going to be the CEO. Mm-hmm. He had the scientific background, super talented there. And so it was easy in our world.
Yeah, no brainer.
He didn't want the business side of it, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't want the R&D side of it.
Okay, so you guys start the business. Did you start visiting doctors' offices, having stakeholder meetings? What was the process?
So we knew we were going to do healthcare products. We knew we were going to make some sort of healthcare product. We had a bunch of ideas, but we weren't sure what our first product was going to be.
What were some of the ideas?
Well, I can't share too many.
Oh, okay.
Because they still might come to market one day.
Right. I didn't know if there were any random ones like toe fungus or...
Yes.
Okay. This is what I'm... Spoiler alert.
warts and
it's
all sorts
it's the
of
things that
unsexy
people
things.
struggle, a quarter of the population or half the population struggles with, right?
Yep. So our overriding goal was look for unmet medical needs, meaning categories where millions and millions of people have problems, but there's just not a lot of good products on the market to solve those problems. And so
like over the counter?
Over the counter.
Okay.
Yeah. Earwax impaction was something that every doctor we talked to, whether they are a pediatrician, a geriatrician, or just, plain in the middle GP, said if you could come up with something that gets rid of earwax, you would make, a mint. And so we thought to ourselves, we went and looked at the category and we're like, yeah, there's really, the technology is 60 years old. It's not very good. So millions of people were going to the doctor to have earwax removed. And that just seems so silly.
I've had to do that.
Absolutely. Most people have, or they know somebody that has. It's painful. It's time consuming.
Yeah, it felt weird.
Yeah. So that was our first target. And we spent then 9 months in the lab at UNT Health Science Center.
Shout out.
We partnered with UNT Health Science Center and then Tech Fort Worth. And if anybody doesn't know about Tech Fort Worth and UNT, they both have, and the programs kind of work together, but they have amazing, what I call incubator programs for young companies. You get office space, you get lab space, access to incredible mentors that have seen it all. And so that's what we did.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so 9 months later, Joe and I came out of the lab with a product that dissolved earwax.
In 15 minutes.
Yes,
and I need to get one of these.
Oh, I should have brought you some.
But my husband asked for a sample. I was telling him about you last night. He has had problems with his ears. Oh my gosh, I think since he was 16. He's a master diver. He's perforated eardrums, diving too deep, everything. But he's always had problems with his ears.
Send him over.
Yeah, I sure will. He can be the guinea pig for your next products
totally.
too. So, earwax is pretty sexy. Tell us a fun fact about earwax. I started Googling them yesterday, fun facts about earwax.
There's some crazy ones, right? Well, so just basic things people don't know. Everybody's earwax is different. And earwax is a combination of skin cells that slough off from the inside of your ear canal, and then you have these modified sweat glands in your ear that pump out oils, and then they combine with those skin cells and debris to form the wax.
This is getting good.
I know, right?
I'm sorry, more about secretions.
Secretions, right? That's what's coming out of those modified sweat glands. And your earwax might be very different from my earwax, and it can be based on genetics. It can be based on diet, and
where you're from.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
I heard that
East
anthropologists.
Asian,
I heard anthropologists are now figuring out where people were from based on their ear. That's weird.
It's crazy. Yeah, and your earwax stores a bunch of information in it. So, it's just this. It's. And what's so funny is no one ever talked about earwax to me, ever, until I started this company. And now pretty much everyone I meet has an earwax story that they want to tell me. And it's usually pretty gross. But I love it because it's allowing them to divulge some of their deepest, darkest secrets. I've never told anybody this, but...
You should ask them to write letters to you, and then you can publish a book and be like, this is from Anonymous.
My favorite was someone that told me, I have to hide the Q-tips in the trash can because I don't want my spouse to see them because I'm so embarrassed.
Oh my gosh. Aw. Yeah, I get it. My ears are fine, but every once in a while I see our 16-year-olds and I'm like, oh my gosh. But it's because he's always wearing AirPods.
Yep.
Always.
That's been a boom for us. So sticking stuff in your ears causes those glands to produce more lipids and wax and secretions. And
you have a new product for that, right?
For earbud cleaning kit.
Yeah.
We do. Yes. So, and it was sort of...
I bet that comes in handy. We have 6 pairs at our house.
I should have brought you a kit. Yeah. And so it was out of necessity. People in our office wear their AirPods, and we were trying to figure out, how do you clean these? And we realized how many people were searching Google how to clean your AirPods or earbuds, and there's no kit.
I'm kind of wondering how people have been cleaning it, like Windex, or what are they doing?
All sorts of crazy stuff.
Bleach?
I mean,
I'm scared.
and less liquids and more like using like pinhole to
really?
pick stuff out. And,
Okay.
And so we came up with a whole kit, and it's makes it real easy. You could use it with the whole family's earbuds. Gets them clean. It helps them last longer. If you ever notice the sound quality bad, it's probably because there's wax buildup in the earbud. So simple.
Or in your ears.
Or in your ears. Absolutely. We got to keep both clean.
So are Q-tips a no-no?
No. Use it for makeup.
Okay, I'm so confused. Like, how is it that we've been conditioned
Our whole
lives with use Q-tips, but what we're really doing is just jamming it further down there?
It's kind of like Visine. We grew up with everybody grew up with Visine in the.
Oh yeah,
You're not supposed to use
commercials.
Visine. Yeah, you're not supposed to use Visine because it's got a bounce back effect, and so it gets rid of the redness, but then the redness comes back stronger later.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I can't put things in my eyes.
But things we grew up with, we thought were just
Right.
normal, and it was like, yeah, but they're not. You shouldn't do that.
So you guys started your company.
Yeah.
Were you working out of your house?
So
Did you get a small space?
So we worked between Corner Bakery, UNT Health Science Center, and then we eventually rented space at Tech Fort Worth, and we had
cool.
a room there. And the really once we came out of the lab with a product, our next goal was to run a clinical trial on it, meaning we wanted to have a doctor run a study with patients to see how effective it was in these patients' ears. And it was on a cheap side was going to cost about $50,000. And Joe and I are self-funding this business up to this point. And there was a business pitch competition. There was a promotion for it, and the prize was $50,000.
Wow.
And so my little competitive side, I saw this ad, and I looked at Joe, and I'm like, I'm going to win that. And
Where was it? In Fort Worth?
it was in Dallas.
Oh, okay.
It was sponsored by the Deck.
Cool.
And Co-America Bank. And so we got through phase 1, we got through phase 2, and then the final phase was, I think, 5 companies presenting in front of a big audience and a panel of judges, and we won.
Oh my gosh.
And that was the moment, I think, was like
And how old was your business at this point?
less than a year old.
Wow.
Yeah, maybe just at a year. And that was the moment I'm like, okay, I think we have a business.
This is incredible. I feel like we have so much in common. We were both fired before we started our business. We're avid LaCroix lovers. And our business, I think we were 5 months old, something like that. We won first place in the Fort Worth business plan competition and, had to do the business pitch too.
Yeah.
Get it.
It's awesome. And I think
That was a high five.
that was a high five, yes. I think we're showing that there's a pathway,
Yeah.
right? And put yourself out there and do these competitions, and if you do get fired, just get back up. And it's that perseverance, right?
Well, when you're passionate about something, you go all in, you have a great business partner, you've done all the research, you understand the market. So tell me, what makes you passionate about helping people with earwax issues?
So it's less
Right? Because you have to have that passion.
Yeah, for me, it's less about the actual product than it is about empowering consumers to take care of their health.
Right.
And so we're bigger than earwax now, but we started with earwax. And the other thing I'm super passionate about I'm just passionate about people in general.
And unmet needs.
Unmet needs. And then creating a company where people wanted to come to work. Because I felt like corporate America had lost some of that. Like, people just felt like a number. They felt disposable.
The bottom line.
Yeah, it's all about the bottom line. And so I wanted to not only create amazing products that empowered consumers, but create environment internally that empowered our employees, where employees actually felt valued and felt like they had a say in what was happening and felt like they could take risk and it was okay to fail, as long as they get back up and start again. And so kind of shifting the way a company thinks about things. It was less about money to me, and it was more about people and people finding success in their own way.
So your mantra is people over profits.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about why conscious capitalism is important for your company.
So it kind of goes back to what I was just alluding to, that I felt like corporate America had lost its way.
Right.
And I think about just myself and how I'm motivated, and some of the bosses that I've had that truly motivated me and had the biggest impact on me. They were the ones that took a moment to understand me, took a moment to understand my family and, what was important to me. And it was simple, right? Just treat me like a human rather than a machine that's coming to, make you money. And so that was going to be the foundation. And I think conscious capitalism is all about having a purpose over profits. It could be anything. Our purpose was people. And we believe that if people feel empowered, they feel valued, they feel heard, they're going to work harder for you. They're going to produce, better results for you. So the profits come as a result of thinking about how any decision I make impacts the people, in my world. So it's a simple concept. It's so often overlooked. But I think it's incredibly powerful. And we're 6 years in now, and I think we've proven that by focusing on the people, we were profitable, after 1 year of selling our products on the market, and have continued to grow since then.
Awesome. So during COVID, how were you able to maintain a positive company culture with your employees?
So 2020 was really rough, and it was rough for a couple reasons. COVID was only one of the reasons it was rough for us. We ended up having a recall of 3 of our products, and that was probably more emotionally devastating to the company and the culture than COVID. COVID, we adjusted really quick. We put in new guidelines, but we didn't shut down because we manufacture our products. Mm-hmm. So we had
You were essential?
Yeah. So we set up sort of new protocols, and it's hard to remember, but we didn't know anything, right? I remember I would come in early and wipe down every door handle and every surface with alcohol because we thought it spread that way. We just didn't know.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. And hindsight.
At that point, it was just if you have a fever.
Yeah.
It was strange because it wasn't until maybe June that it was, if you lost your sense of taste or smell, it's like, oh my gosh, people had these symptoms in February, but they didn't have a fever, so they didn't get tested.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot we didn't know.
So much we didn't know. And so we were, we tried to be overly cautious. And we had some happy learnings in terms of, we used to shut down our production line at lunch or for breaks. But during COVID, when we were trying to not have a bunch of people in one room at a time, we started rotating people off what I'd call our fill line. They'd go take their break. We'd keep things running. We'd just slow it down. And it turns out by never stopping the production, we were actually more efficient. So some of these things were happy learnings that we might not have ever tried if COVID hadn't hit us. So we adjusted pretty quick there. The recall was a moment as a leader where I've had to make the toughest decision so far in this business because it was a choice to recall the product.
So that was your choice.
It was my choice. It was the right thing to do.
But you weren't forced
Correct.
into doing
We weren't
it.
forced to do it, but it was the right thing to do. And the things I asked myself were, keeping the product on, how does that affect our company reputation long term? How does it affect my relationship with FDA long term? How does it affect my employees, my investors? And as I went through sort of all of the stakeholders, I'm like, the decision's easy. I need to recall it. Now it costs us like $1 million. Wow. In a small business, that's painful. But I knew we could.
You don't have any regret?
No, no regret. It was absolutely the right thing to do. We were able to, reset our foundation. We hired some new people with different expertise, and we learned from it. And I think my favorite message to entrepreneurs is you're going to fail. Just fail fast and get back up.
That's right.
Right?
I'm all about the fail fast method.
Yeah, we fail every day on something. And I tell my team, I'm like, let's learn from it. Let's not make the same mistake again, and let's move forward.
So you love to learn. I mean, you're what we would call a perpetual learner.
Yeah.
What is it about, what makes you motivated to learn something new every day?
It's a joy and a thrill of sort of challenging myself. And maybe this goes back to why I like sports, and I like a challenge. And if I just rest on what I currently know, usually it's not enough information. And I'm the type of leader that I'll tell you if I don't know, and I'll call somebody and I'll say, can you help me? Can you help me think through this? What am I missing? I think the leaders that get in the most trouble are the ones that think they know everything, because you just can't. I mean, running a business, you can't know everything. So I've just taken the mindset that I'm going to learn something new every day, and it's okay to fail. And we're going to get better.
So where are you learning? I mean, are you learning from, do you have mentors? Is it groups that you're involved in, reading studies?
So it's a mixture of stuff. So I definitely have advisors that
For your business?
Yeah, that are experts in different areas. I have mentors. I read a lot. I love reading other leaders' books. So other people that have built companies. I'm reading right now the Facebook book, what is it, An Ugly Truth,
I
or
don't know.
something that just came out. But I just like hearing other people's stories, and it's actually helped me figure out more about myself and be more open about myself by reading about other leaders and their trials and tribulations and challenges. It makes me feel not so alone.
Well, would you rather read a book or listen to an Audible?
Both, but I do a lot of Audible because I can get through it faster.
Right.
But at the end of the day...
And you can multitask.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
grocery shop
Totally.
or do laundry and...
Totally. But at the end of the day, I do I read The Economist religiously every week. So
It's great.
Yeah. So at night I sit and read that. And then I listen to a lot of podcasts. And so my favorite one is How I Built This.
Oh my gosh.
Do you love that one?
That's what inspired me to start this podcast.
So-
Guy Raz.
Yeah,
That was
totally.
exactly what inspired me.
Yeah. And so I think we learn so much. I mean,
Hearing other people's stories.
100%. Yep.
Because
And
they're
then-
just so relatable. I mean, you can just resonate with somebody else's story and being able to have that inside look.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
that's
not
so
feel
cool.
alone.
I love that. So
Yeah.
what's one of your favorite episodes?
Of How I Built This. Love Sarah Blakely and Spanx, and hearing her story, because I just love that she sold copiers before. And
Yeah.
then
And it's been a big week for her.
I guess I haven't followed what happened this week.
Oh, she sold the majority of her shares to
Nope.
Blackstone. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations,
Yeah,
Sarah.
and Birchbox sold yesterday.
Oh my gosh.
I
Oh,
know.
you're up on the up.
Well, this is what I do is follow female founders.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm sorry. What's your favorite episode?
But so I think that's one of, I mean, there's so many great ones.
There really are.
The Birchbox one was great. I'm trying to think of some recent ones. It's all like,
One of my favorites is Cliff Bars.
That was a
I
great
thought that
one.
was a good one.
yep.
And Bobby Brown.
That was a great
I thought
one.
that was a really good one too. Tom's Shoes.
That was
I
a
thought
great
that was
one.
interesting.
Title IX.
Oh, I don't know that one.
That's a recent one. And she started the athletic apparel company, Title IX.
Oh, I know what Title IX is. I
Yeah.
used to work in a university.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
And so
interesting.
it's fascinating. She was a college athlete and realized that they didn't make clothes. All the clothes were just men's clothes shrunk down, and she called it like pinkified. Everything was shrunk and colored pink for women in sports. And she's like, why don't we design sports clothes for female bodies? And so she was on the cutting edge before Lululemon and before
Wow.
Athleta and all these other big brands. She started a women's athletic apparel company. So listen to that one.
That really is interesting. When you think about like t-shirts,
Yeah.
like, oh, it's a men's t-shirt. We're just wearing a size medium.
Yeah, and that's all we wore growing up. Think about it. That's
I know.
all we wore.
It's
we
so
didn't have
strange.
the female cut. We didn't have the Lululemon or
Wow. So we're starting to wrap up
Yeah.
here. What word would you use to describe your journey?
unknowable.
Ooh, I like that. It's mysterious.
It's unknowable.
Can I tell you what I thought you were going to say?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were going to say resilience.
I would say that would describe me, but my journey, I feel like I had no idea I would end up here. And I still have no idea where I'll end up, right? I'm still on the journey, but you can't plan it.
No. Well, you have a great journey. So another thing I wanted to ask you is how important do you think the concept of recognition is for female-led businesses?
I still think it's crucial because, like, I have a 13-year-old daughter, and I want her generation to see all of us as female founders succeeding. And I think the recognition gets the publicity and gets us out in the sphere where they have access to see. You know, if we hide our success and we hide in the shadows, you can't see it, can't be it. And so, you know, my daughter has direct access to me, but, you know, her friends need exposure to women that are out breaking barriers and doing great things. And not that the dads aren't either, you know, they're doing great things too, but girls need to see what they are capable of doing.
Yeah, they really do. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And if you'd like to reach out to Elyse, you can visit their website at
www.eosera.com. That's EOSERA.com. And yeah, you can reach out to us there. We love to have visitors to see our factory. If you're local, you know, just contact us. You can come see how we produce our products. And I'm always a big fan of supporting other women in business. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the FoundHER Club, where women aren't just building a business, they are building themselves. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at FoundHER's Club. Or you could visit our website, foundhersclub.com. Send us any questions you have or recommendations for future podcast guests. Even better, you could spread the love by subscribing to the FoundHER's Club on iTunes. And if you really love us, leave us a 5-star review. This will help other listeners just like you find us. Now go share your magic with the world.